All right, so we finally wrapped up this 8 episode series, and that finale was wild. We'll get into that kind of in a bit here. But before we get there, what did you think about kind of the middle parts of the show? What was sticking out to you? Did you enjoy it? Were you like, man, I'm kind of waiting for the end to come up? How was your enjoyment of the show on the whole, Sav?
I went in and I was very, very vocally on the record about this of not really being interested in this show,
Yeah.
saying that no one asked for it. It's not necessary. The oversaturation of Batman stuff, especially Batman villains getting solo stuff, I was very, very adamant about that. And I think my general point, I still don't like throw it away, but this is a damn good show. Like, just
Mm.
straight up. The show was great, even throughout the middle portions, the character development, the cinematography. I said this during our Agatha episode, and I think I'm willing to repeat that for this. This show clearly has a showrunner, somebody with a vision, someone who knows what they want this to be. And this show, maybe I could be wrong, but this show doesn't have the vibe of, again, corporate fingerprints all over it, making unnatural changes. They got to do their thing, cook, and what came out the oven was damn good.
Shout out to Lauren LaFranc, the showrunner, who, as you said, had a vision. She had a tragedy sketched out for the Penguin, and I think that is very evident in the way the story progresses, how it gets into his backstory, his family's backstory. His second in command, his backstory, and how all of that plays out in that wild finale that you mentioned, Wes. But as strong as the show was, I will say, going from probably around episode 3 or 4 all the way to episode 7, there's some really strong moments, great set pieces, but I do think the show is a little uneven in places where sometimes sometimes the trappings of the Arkham world or of the Batman world, Gotham world, whatever, kind of like peek their head a little too much in certain places, that, for me at least, overshadow some of what was making the show really strong in those first couple episodes, which was the show's restraint from going too comic book, and making it just a gritty crime drama.
So I have thoughts about that, about the DC balancing of the show versus crime drama. But what do you mean when you say there were moments where it felt like they were too tied to the Arkham? Give me an example. I'm not disagreeing, but what does that look like for you?
Yeah. So I think in a couple places we see things get a little loose and uneven, right? And so I think a chunk of that has to do with Sophia. When we go to Arkham Asylum with her, like, her overall backstory episode is really strong, great ideas. But kind of like you get into Arkham Asylum and it gets a little cartoonish in there.
It feels too comic booky. It feels like noticeably comic booky compared to outside of Arkham.
Yeah, compared to what we saw in the first couple episodes, which felt much more like a grounded mafia world, right? And then suddenly we're in Arkham. There's her therapist who's using this random, I don't even know if it's hypnosis or like the glowing red light that recurs throughout the season, and we don't really get full understanding of what that is. That's felt kind of weird. Just like all the other inmates at Arkham are way over the top, especially in their candy striped jumpsuits, and like it was just really, it felt really extra and kind of took me out of the world that they had established early on in the season. And then Sophia herself, over the course of the final or the back half of the season, she too, some of her twists and turns in terms of her motivations started really just pivoting on a dime. First she's like out to become the boss of the family, and then she's like changing into the Gigante and like offering all these lower level thugs. money and power, and then suddenly she's working with Moroni, and then she's all about Cobb, and then she's leaving the family and leaving the mafia life, but she still wants Cobb. Like it felt like a little too jumpy, and I think those were, as great of a character she was, I feel like that's where the show was kind of getting a little shakier.
Interesting. I don't agree.
I did not feel that at all.
Yeah, I don't. I understand where you're coming from about the Arkham piece. I loved it and I enjoyed it, but I could see why someone would be like, "All right, this is teetering on breaking my suspension of disbelief," and the vibe of the show. I won't really argue with you on that. I don't agree with you about Sophia. I think if she was the only character, maybe those critiques would be. I'd agree more, but I like the twists and turns of her realizing what she wants, in contrast to the story of Oz, who, from the pretty beginning, we know what he wants. He wants it all. He wants to be on top. I don't know. I like the journey of those two characters and the parallels of Sophia realizing, actually, F this life. I ain't about this shit. But she has to come to that realization versus Oz, who's just like, man, I will do anything to get to this spot, and I will do whatever it takes to get there. And that's why, the ending played out the way it is. Like, he was more driven, and she, frankly, just wasn't enough of a dick to win in a show like this. But I understand where you're coming from, Brian. I definitely don't agree.
Thank you for understanding.
No, I get where you're coming from. Don't agree at all. I thought Sophia was kind of a show stealer up until maybe the second half of the show when we started to learn more about Oz. But like, I liked some of the pacing of character.
And that's kind of what I'm saying, right? Like, her character maybe doesn't pay off all that well.
I think I don't disagree with that when you think about her ending. I think this is going to be one of those cases where something will get retroactively better depending on what they do with the character down the line. Because if they don't do anything with Sophia after this, then I think that's a little bit of a smidge disappointing, versus are they going to utilize this character later, which could be a part of a more interesting character arc.
Well, she definitely gets some fan mail from a certain Selena Kyle. So
exactly. So
she's absolutely going somewhere.
I hope they do something with it. She's an interesting character, but I understand your critiques with her. Sorry, Wes.
That didn't make sense to me, the Selena Kyle thing, but we'll keep going.
Catwoman reaching out to the Hangman. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure where that's headed.
Well, she know her half sister.
Well, also,
she know
saying
her dad.
that they're half sisters.
Yeah, but they all have sisters because Falcone's the dad, right? Because remember, we learned that in Batman.
Yeah,
and,
that's what I figured.
We learned.
I didn't remember that. I mean, I figured that out once she said it, but I guess I was like, I don't know if I get that, because like Catwoman was more on the like altruistic side, even though she like had a penchant for crime, right? But definitely not where she'd be like, oh yeah, I love the brutality of this. This psycho woman.
Well, just and we don't have to spend too much time on this, but it's worth noting they established that Selena is a son of the Falcone dude, and a Falcone in the Batman, right? So we already knew that. So once we got introduced to Sophia, we already knew instantly, oh, that's Catwoman's half sister. And remember, in the Batman, Catwoman learns that her father was the one who strangled the mother, and so it wouldn't be a stretch for Selena Kyle to figure out, oh, I don't think Sophia killed this woman. My dad, who is a documented piece of shit, who I know strangled my mother the way these women died, is actually the one who did it, not Sophia. Which, I mean, I think that's where they're going with that, because
Gotcha.
everyone kind of knows
that.
Because everyone knows that a lot, not the general public, but people who are in the know that, hey, yo, man, Falcone was on that shit. It's just everyone's scared and covers up because he was a gangster. But anyways, I don't think she's reaching out because she thinks she's a monster. I think she knows she probably is innocent because Catwoman knows that their respective dad was on that shit, killing people.
I think for me, for this, the middle parts of the season, I was texting you guys I was a little bit later. I was having to catch up on some other things. And, as the show is building through episodes 3, 4, 5, 6, like, I did really enjoy all the machinations. It felt like really good TV, right? It didn't feel like filler, but at the same time, it wasn't like, oh, we're just like rushing to get to the end, right? There was kind of a nice, good balance of, oh my God, like this moment matters just because it matters as a moment. And, we're slowly progressing the story. I never felt like, oh man, this episode just kind of like never advanced the plot or never advanced the overall arc of the show. but it also didn't feel like it was rushing us to get to the end. I thought they really like nailed that balance of it. And I don't know that I have anything specific around that, but even, I mean, this is a spoiler, but like one of the characters is held hostage. Oz has him, and he's gonna trade this hostage for this huge shipment of drugs that's gonna like, you know, increase his wealth. And he gets kind of double crossed. The switch doesn't go right, and so he's prepared for this. He had already we're like, why is this guy so sweaty? But it turns out they had doused him in, you know, some kind of flame, some kind of like
Kerosene?
flammable liquid, yeah, some kind of gasoline or something. And in the middle of this shootout, drops his lighter on the trail of kerosene that the man had created, and he was in the middle of hugging his mom. So they both just conflagrate into this fiery ball of human, and they're screaming.
That's a big boy word.
Yeah.
That's an SAT word. That was a vocab word
You're
for the kids out
welcome,
there.
students.
He said, my
Yeah,
students
just-
didn't get the definition.
Just absolutely like brutal way for this guy to die, and it didn't have to be that way, right? But I mean it did for the show, but it didn't have to be that way if the lady had just actually traded him. But she was so caught up on her vengeance for the ways that Oz had, you know, done her wrong, because he's always doing people wrong, that, you know, it didn't go according to plan. And then he gets egg on his face because his drugs, you know, they get kind of damaged, and he's like, no, we got to save the drugs
Because of him.
Yeah, because of his actions. So, you know, it's always one step forward, one step back with the Penguin, for sure. But just like having those moments of like, oh my God, this is like no fucking joke, really kept me tied in, right? And then Sophia's moment with her family, where she just decides like, these people aren't for me, I'm not for them, and so they need to go. And she only saves the little girl, the niece, but gasses everybody else and kills them. Unbelievable. And then shoots Johnny Vitti in the head, like in front of everyone at the conference table. I was like, I was talking to my sister, I was like, that was so brutal, but also like makes no sense. Like, why the fuck would you keep him in a dungeon, try to convert him to like help you in some way, or like be a pawn or a tool, put him back in a suit, which I missed the part where he
This
like
is
actually,
what I'm saying.
yeah, where he like actually turned around. Like, did they show that part where he like decided to like help her out? Because I didn't feel that. And
Wait,
then
which part? Help who?
so Johnny V was in the dungeon as a prisoner, right? And she was kind of torturing him, kind of just like keeping him around,
Yeah.
right? And then I feel like either I missed it or the next scene, he's back in a suit and he's like kind of in charge. Not in charge, but like he's like her deputy at this point.
He was getting her to play ball. Or she was getting him to play ball because he was arguing.
Yeah,
Because he was
but we
gonna
didn't
kill
see
him.
the part where he agreed or like why he changed his mind, I don't think.
Because he was freezing in the dungeon.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, because she was
It
going
sort
to
of
let him
happened off
freeze.
He was
screen.
tortured. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, also it was like a West. She was actively torturing him and said, "Hey, yo, you gonna die here." Gave him the ultimatum. He tried to weasel his way out, and he realized, "Oh, my hands are tied." Literally, go with it or die.
Did they show us that moment of realization on his face that he was going to agree? I feel like they didn't.
I mean, you see her make it pretty clear what his
Okay.
options are, and you see from his. I don't know, Brian.
Small moment there. They could have given
I
us
know.
the realization or the nod, like, fine, you know, whatever. It's not a big deal. But what is a big deal is she spent all this time getting him into like her circle in some ways, right, on her side, and then immediately blows his brains out. His very first scene with her just blows his brains out. I was like, well, what? Why did we just spend
Well, she had to
20
make a show
minutes
of
watching you
power.
torture him and keep him hostage if you were just gonna like shoot him in the head anyways? But
As a show of power, she's trying to take over the family. He's one of the big dogs. If you can get the big
She
dog
could
of
have
the
did that
family,
with anybody.
that's what I'm
really.
saying. And
who's
she could have
left,
done
though?
it
'Cause
earlier.
Everyone's dead. The whole family's dead, though.
She didn't need to hold him hostage for a couple weeks or a week or whatever to do that. And
Disagree.
it's fine.
Also, all of her dealings with Maroney, kind of like,
Were they
you
weird?
know,
Yeah.
Those were like pointless scenes, right? Like, did we really need any of that? Probably not. They just needed the body at the end of the show to, you know, for the Penguin to say, "Oh yeah, the Falcones and Maronis were killing each other. Hey, council person, you use this, right?"
I sort of bought it, and in that like she's
He's
not
making
quite
faces, folks.
No,
Savon
she's
is
not.
making faces.
I bought it because she's not quite right. She's like still traumatized from her time in Arkham, right? So she's not going to be a pretty.
Sure, it makes sense, but I'm
yeah,
just
she's
saying
not
the
gonna be
way that it
100%
played
of a
out
linear
was like,
character.
all right, whatever. Like all this Maroni stuff, like nobody cares about Maroni. Whatever. He just shows up. Like suddenly he's crazed, and then suddenly he's dying of old age. I don't know. Like, come on.
All right, that was
we
maybe
didn't
one of the
need that.
that was
I
maybe one
love-
of the weaker parts.
I thought that shit was dope, man. Y'all tripping.
I liked it. I did. I
I
liked
mean,
it.
I like when Penguin was like yelling at him after he was already dead. That
Yeah.
was great. And this is what I'm saying. Like there are like really great moments, some not as great, right? And
So y'all didn't like Sophia and
the
Maroni.
show had tons of potential to be just like great all the way through.
See, I wasn't rocking with the like Sophia working together with Maroni to get back at Oz because he's awful.
No, I was bought in.
It was fine.
There's revenge.
I guess I'm confused with what you.
And he had killed his wife.
Yeah, like all the stuff.
He wanted him dead too.
That's fine.
Oz has gone out of his way to antagonize.
If someone
everybody.
killed Anna, you wouldn't want them dead. I mean,
no. I'm saying like the interactions between Maroni and Sophia is like whatever.
They could have dialed it up.
Do we really care? Do we really care? It's not what we're here for.
On the slick because they realized, yo, man, F this dude Oz.
Well, yeah, and
I think
it
really
makes
good job
like
of making you
their
say,
inability to actually act on it was like come on, guys.
My biggest thing is like, man, y'all suck at killing this man.
Stacking the odds against Oz, we feel nervous because Oz is now going up against seemingly an insurmountable problem.
It's very surmountable.
I don't know. See, I guess that's what I like is that all the other criminals in the show had redeeming qualities about them, and that's what Oz took advantage of to ultimately win. Like I liked the contrast of the different criminals in the show because the other criminals, although they're still all a bunch of criminals, like not trying to act like they're like good guys,
murderers,
but
they're not just thieving, they're murderers.
But even then, they are still way more sympathetic than Oz is, right? Like even if you don't care about Maroni, he clearly cares about his family. You got that scene with him and Sophia cooking the food, and it's clear that okay, he's a criminal, but he isn't.
He loves his wife.
He isn't the other people.
He's a family man.
It sounds cheesy, but like low key, and even Sophia respect that compared to Sophia's family, who they were just god awful. But even Sophia, we know, has something resembling a moral compass. She's not cruel for cruelty's sake. Not a good person, but she's not like I like that those two characters' downfall ended up being y'all just aren't awful enough, and Oz is more awful and cares about fewer things and all that. And like I said, he beats both of them by exploiting what they care about, right? Which I think is good because it does tie into the ending of Oz got where he is by screwing over people's weak points. And he realized, someone could absolutely do the same because they did. But I don't know. I like those things. I liked watching a show where Oz is the main criminal and the other criminals are not as awful as him. And you're torn between rooting for the main character and title card, the main character of the show versus not leads who are arguably more sympathetic. Like there are parts of the show where I'm like, do I like Sophia more than Oz right now? But I liked feeling that way and being torn because they're all awful, but there's different brands of awful. And how do you draw your line of awful where you let them get away and awful where it's like, all right, B, I just can't get down with you. Like all of us were probably like, Oz is interesting. And then once he killed Vic, we're like, all right, cool, you crossed the line, pimp. I wash my hands of you.
Yeah, right.
But even the other worst
I totally agree with you.
Do nothing like that.
I agree with you from story logic wise. I disagree with how it played out. Right. I'm just saying that like their scenes were not strong. They were like much weaker scenes, and that's where the show got really uneven.
So you didn't like Mr. Krabs?
Who's Mr. Krabs?
Clancy Brown, who plays Salvatore Maroni, is also the voice. He's Clancy Brown. He's the voice of Mr.
I thought
Krabs.
He was like, oh, right. He's like a voice of a lot of things, right?
He does a lot of voice acting work.
Yeah, I just thought like
Mr. Krabs, no.
Come on, Mr. Krabs, give us more. Also, what's all this stuff about like you like? Speak. Was he speaking Arabic or something?
I think he was speaking Farsi.
Farsi.
Wife, I think he's
right. She's Iranian. Yeah.
His
So
wife
he's speaking
is Iranian.
Farsi. Yeah, and like I don't know. It's just like random trappings. Like
known
to what end? I don't
xenophobe
know.
Ryan Redondo is like, why are they in here speaking Farsi when they could be speaking English?
I think they're just forcing a lot of like random details for no reason.
It just added texture to his
It adds
character.
flavor. Dang, man.
Okay,
Brian, when did you
okay.
become Wes? What is this shit?
Okay. Okay, let's throw on random details for spice. Whatever.
Those
See,
are random
Brian,
details.
now, Brian, here's
It
the thing.
These are
humanized
random
him.
details.
No, it
Yeah,
These are random
fleshes
details.
out. It fleshed out
He
him
was
being
not
a
going to
family
be a
man.
fleshed out character no
It
matter
doesn't
what.
matter.
No, but it gives.
No, I'm with you, Wes. It draws.
Alright.
It helps draw the distinction when they're eating the dinner with Sophia that this man was tight with his family, knew
Yeah.
his family's culture. That was a contrast of her realizing her family was nothing like that, and that's part of her motivation to say, "I'm actually going to lean into the Gigante crime family," because she recognized the toxic dynamics of her people in contrast to how your boy Maroney did.
And her dad never celebrated her mom, right? Like the way or
her
memorialized her.
culture.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, high keto, but
Right.
I know you're being
she's like,
sarcastic,
"You're the dad
Brian.
I wish I had." Moment, right? That's all.
Yeah, I know you're being sarcastic, Brian, but like I rocked with that because I thought that made a lot of Sophia's character motivations made sense. Because she's in here, does she want revenge? Does she want to step out the game? She probably wants a mix of all that, but she has to realize it and shit has to happen. I don't know. I enjoyed that. Like, I'm glad that her interacting with another criminal who cared about family actually developed her character and gave context to some of her later decisions. Now, I can't go back and forth agreeing about if you didn't like the execution of it because that's just a matter of taste. But I do like what it serves.
Brian in his head just
storyline-wise.
went, "No, it's objectively
See,
bad."
if I was Brian, I'd be pulling my credentials of where's
Yeah.
your award-winning, directorship. I'd be
I
pulling
mean,
that
we've
card.
had these debates before, like about
but I
Star
wouldn't
Wars and
yeah,
stuff.
but I would.
Good
yeah, but I
Star
wouldn't
Wars story, terrible movie. Like, what can I say?
I would have one. My criticism, the thing that like a little bit took me out was not so much about the Sophia thing. I actually kind of really enjoyed that, like they showed her having all these moments of change and they didn't feel jarring to me. I think maybe Brian, you're saying like they just felt a little bit jarring or a little bit like they wouldn't have worked in this world. But like her hair becoming like very different, her outfits becoming very different throughout the show, right? Her confidence and her violence, starting to show up. None of that bothered me. I think that was really good. Something else actually was sort of the thing that was sort of taking me out, which like if it had changed, you wouldn't have a show. So I don't know how you sort of work around this. Was all of these situations that Penguin found himself in, a lot of them of his own making and screwing people over and whatever, was like, he sort of had title character armor, whereas like there were so many times where it's just like, dude, you there's no way out of this. Like you really fucked it up. You should have died. You should have died this time. Like how did 18,000 people miss shooting at you? You were held
You're a
hostage.
huge target.
Yeah. And you can't run very fast because you have a disability, or whatever. There's just like so many times where it's just like you were in mortal danger and you somehow slithered out of it, or you talked your way out of it, right? They made a big deal of him like, oh, you can talk your way out of anything. And it's like, I don't think he really talked his way out of that thing. He just, said some things and nobody bought his bullshit and, it wasn't there. So I think of all the things that to me was like, maybe there's like a small thing I wish would have been a little bit different. And I don't know how they would have done this because otherwise he would die and you just wouldn't have a show. He found himself in so many precarious positions. It was just like, at some point you're going to lose one of these like gambles and, because he wasn't a mastermind. There wasn't like, oh, I've got everything planned for, a lot of it was him like ad-libbing and making
Shooting by the hip.
Yeah.
So,
a lot of it was improv, but I don't know. That was my only thing that took me out of it.
Can I gently push back?
Yeah, for sure. It didn't like ruin the show for me. I just found
Ever
myself
so gentle.
Gentle pushback.
Use the gloves.
a little gentle.
For what it's worth, I think the one moment where that stood out to me, like noticeably, was the finale when he kind of got out the chair and was able to kind of fight his way out. Like at that point, I was like, yeah, you probably should have been cooked. But I think for the other parts of the show, I like when, like, I think a character can lose and have stakes and take an L. It doesn't have to result in them dying. Like I don't think Oz has to get shot in order for it to show that he's like, to show that he doesn't have plot armor. He does get stabbed. He does lose his drugs. He does have, I guess my thing is that he finds himself in shitty situations that he might come out with his life, but he still takes a lot of L's. His whole drug operation.
Find him taking a lot of L's.
He self-sabotaged his whole thing with the bliss, and that was his own fault with setting people on fire. That was a setback. but then the stuff with his mom resulted in him losing his entire drug lab. There was the point where his goons and people moving the drugs in other neighborhoods were getting strung up and killed, and he had to try and finagle all the like. He has moments of plot. Like, he still has main character. He's not about to die, but I think they did a pretty good job actually of him being an underdog and seeing what traits help him win. But a win doesn't mean it's a flawless victory. Like, he won, but he took a lot of L's in the process to get there. I don't know. I like that. I would be more bothered, regardless of him getting like shot or injured, although he does get tortured a few times. I would have been bothered more if like it felt like his gang operation stuff was going too smoothly. And I like that he had quite a few setbacks and things go completely ass up. Like, you know, his girl who was the escort he messed with completely flipping on him. Like, that completely blew up in his face. I think he had a lot of egg on face moments. I think why I like the show so much is that I like how he bounces back from his egg on face moments. Or if he does get bailed out by the plot, it's because of a seed he planted before. Like, hey, Vic bailed him out, but it's like, hey man, he spent that time grooming, winning Vic over, so it makes sense that Vic will bail him out.
Grooming.
I mean,
it is all Pyrrhic victory, right? Pyrrhic.
Yeah, so, you know.
Like he lost.
Another good word.
Yeah.
We're
he
on
lost
fire
a lot
with,
of himself.
Yeah.
We're on fire with the
Take
fireworks
notes,
today.
kids. There's a quiz later.
Yeah. So, not to say that, I agree in the finale, him getting out the chair and not getting shot. I think that was like, all right, B, you're doing a bit much. But I liked specifically throughout the show that he takes L's and he has to be really creative to get out of it. His car gets wrecked. He gets captured and tortured by Sophia and man just finagle his way out of it. Like, he didn't die, but let's not pretend he didn't walk away without, like, you know, taking some licks or getting real effed up or like, oh man, I don't know what I'm finna do. Or, you know, even half his betrayal plans blow up in his face. Like, even when he tries to finesse everybody at the point, he's like, hey, yo, man, you full of shit, bro. I don't know. I like that he just doubles down and if he lies some more.
How did you guys feel about so like when Wes was talking about him talking his way out of problems and you know, just wrangling things together with his gift of gab.
Yeah,
how did you feel, baby? How did you feel about the Gold Summit, right? That kind of moment, right? When he brings all the leaders of the lower level gangs together and he gives them beers and he's talking about, yo, you know, they don't respect us, but you know, it's time that, you know, we take the city. So there's that moment which, you know, sticks out in my mind. And then the other moment as a kid when he's trying to sell to his mom that he did not know where his brothers are at or what's going on with them.
Yeah, so what you're saying, what do we think of it?
Yeah. Did you feel like he's a convincing, persuasive character in those moments?
He's this weird mix of he's a literal charlatan. Like, and I hate to give like the lazy answer, but he's almost like our president, you know, where it's like he's full of it, and yes, he's a liar and all that. And everyone knows that. Like, even in the show, like the Gold Summit, they say, hey, yo, man, you betray everybody you work with. And he's like, yeah. But it's like one of those, it's when the worst, it's like that Onion meme where like Onion article is like the worst person you know makes a good point. It's like Oz is the worst person you know, but everything he said about them with the higher up gangs was true. Like, he didn't speak a lie. It was just coming from a very untrustworthy person. But the dude wasn't lying. They don't respect them. They don't know them. They don't take them seriously. And if they work together, they could run Gotham. Like, he wasn't wrong about any of that. He's just really shitty. But, you know.
I think I bought it that he didn't necessarily believe that was, like, important for him. I mean, it was important for him, but he wasn't doing out of like any favors to them, right? Like, he needed them as much as anything. So it's clear that to the viewer, I think it's clear that like he's a little bit disingenuous in that he's like doing this for them, right? And I think that's clear. And they know that too, but I think it's also like, well, you know, his penchant for not wanting to be disrespected is how he gets to that place. Him reading the room and being like, oh, there's a populist message I can take here because, well, they're not the most powerful in like crime lords. They are collectively fairly powerful, and he seizes on that opportunity. Mm-hmm. And Sophia, it's kind of funny, does the same thing, right? She has a moment with the same characters and is like this whole thing is stupid. you all can take the power. I don't give a shit anymore. Like, I'm for you now too, right? And it's like kind of an interesting, right? Like his populism forces her
Oh,
into
is
being.
she Kamala in this?
I don't think she's Kamala Harris in this, but she ends up kind of having to do a similar gambit with them of, hey, like, this can all be yours. I don't have to have all the power. Like, you guys have this power if you want it, right? And this city can become yours. And so it's interesting in that, like, they're both offering power. She's offering it because she has it. He's offering it because he says we can take it. And so I bought that aspect of it. And I don't know that, like, a guy like him would have these, like, grand speeches or whatever, but I think it didn't feel inconsistent with his character to me. And then
He's
you
a
were saying
finesser.
as a kid, what you were saying as a kid, what was his, when he was pretending he didn't know what happened. Oh yeah, I completely bought that. And I think they fleshed that out over the last 2 episodes around, like, his deep need for his mother's acceptance and attention, his insecurity around his leg, his refusal to be just, like, come to terms with, like, anybody insulting him was, like, interesting, right? Like, he's impulsive in a bad way and violent when he feels disrespected. We saw that in episode 1 where he kills Berto in the first place, right? Or Alberto
Yeah, that
in
was
the
just
first place.
that was just a crash shot. That wasn't even part of a plan. My son
Yeah.
just crashed out and said, "Ah, shit. Now I guess I gotta come up with a plan."
And, like, and we've seen that he's able to pivot, turning his, like, his, like, baser moments into something of a plan as he goes along. And so I think that's all what it is, right? Like, it's like, oh, I did this thing that was impulsive, but I see some benefit in it now, which is now I get my mom all to myself. And so he's going to go with that because that's in his best interest right now, right? And his immediate wants. And that's what he's controlled by, is just, like, this lust for power, this love for his mother's attention. So I don't know. I didn't have a problem with that part of it. Did you feel like you just weren't buying that anyone would be convinced by him?
No, I was convinced.
Okay.
I just want to talk about those moments.
Yeah,
those are cool.
Yeah, one of the best things about Penguin's character, and again, this contrasts very well to other characters in the show, he really does know and experience Gotham in a way that no other characters in the show can quite articulate or speak to, right?
He's got his finger on the pulse of Gotham.
Like, yeah. And it's cheesy, but, like, he unironically does. Like, they establish that he knows Spanish, right? So even just, like, that detail. Now, I thought that detail would actually carry more weight towards the end, but I think it still sets up his character as someone who is more crafty and knowledgeable and maybe even culturally aware than you might give credit for, right? He knows how to tell people what they want to hear regardless of what their background is. He knows how to deal with the rich mafioso people in the nice parts of Gotham, the politicians. He knows the poor neighborhoods. He knows the different poor gangs and who beefing with each other. He knows the literal underground tunnel system thing. Part of what made his character so fun to watch on screen is that, he doesn't have any physical gifts. In fact, he has physical limits. But man, the dude has a non-traditional but a valid skill set that, like, he's manipulative. He knows how to tell people what they want to know, and he knows Gotham and its people better than anybody else in the show. So you put him in a room with the richest or the poorest, he knows what he needs to say to who to get what he wants. I think other characters in the show specifically can't do that. Like, Sophia is so compassionate and removed from some of, like, the lower level crime stuff. She can't relate to the poor people in Crown Point because that's just not her life, right? Same with, the Maronis and all them. They've been used to just being born into power and having it. Oz has seen all sides of that, and he leverages that to be able to come out on top at the end, which I really like that they established his, like, he has a bag, and it's a bag of dirty tricks, but damn it, he got a bag. He's nice with it. But I loved his that speech because he's full of shit, and they all know it. And he even said, y'all hate each other too, but, like, yo, we hate them more, so let's get this money. And I'm like, I mean, that's how real life be. People who hate each other work together all the time for money. Like, this isn't some weird concept. I thought that was a high point of the show, that speech.
And then his masterstroke is actually taking out all of those bosses by appealing to their underlings and saying, let's change the status quo and take out the deep state. Right? Like,
boy, he really on some Trump. He's a Trump style populist, man. He is cooking.
He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. He's feeding people the message that they want to hear. Right.
Don't let the scars in the accent. Don't let the scars in the accent fool you. He know how to talk his stuff.
He's appealing to their, like, inner rage, their inner, like, disrespect that they've been feeling and their unhappiness with you know the current times in Gotham, which are like really shitty for everybody, right? Like they've just had this disaster, they've been controlled by these crime families, their communities are
power.
overrun by drugs,
Yeah,
right?
the
There's no
lights are
power
off.
in
Yeah.
certain
Yeah,
neighborhoods.
there's no power.
In poor
Well, that's
neighborhoods.
just Crown Point, but
That's
I
Crown
mean,
Point still.
but I mean, I'm talking about like his ability to like relate to anyone in the city. He's tapping into everybody's like rage and their dissatisfaction with like what's going on, right? And you know, part of it is he created some of that, right? He's pushing these drugs out into these communities, doing all these things. And then he's like, look at these guys just doing nothing, you know?
Well, for what it's worth, Crown Point was effed up before the drugs, and that didn't really have
Yeah.
nothing to do with Penguin. Like Penguin, in fact, the reason why they looked out for him because he made Crown Point better, right? Like I would argue him coming to Crown Point after it was messed up after the movie and all that, and then Vic said it, right? You gave everybody in Crown Point jobs, and they defended him and looked out for him. Like,
yeah. That's what I'm saying. It's like he could tell, like, oh, this is a situation I can take advantage of when people are downtrodden. They're just looking for something, right? Any kind of bit of help or hope or power or money or whatever, right? And so he's able to give them that.
He knows
Disaster
people very
capitalism.
Well. He knows people very well.
He knows people, that's for sure. And yeah, like he just has that sixth sense about like what do the people need right now and how can I leverage that to like help me get something else that I need.
I do like that Sophia called out, him because he likes to try and fashion himself as this, I'm looking out for the people in the neighborhood thing, when Sophia actually kind of correctly calls out, so that's what you need to tell yourself so that you can not feel shitty about all the awful things you do. It's like under the guy, like, you know, all his stuff. Yeah. It's under the guise of looking out for people, and they might do that, but he's not doing it out the goodness of his heart. He's doing it to serve his own greater means
100%.
later. So he really is the devil.
Yeah.
So should we talk about the two people that he's trying to help out the most?
Yeah, please.
And how that played out?
Yes, please. Oh my lord.
Who do we go with first, Mama or son? His surrogate son.
All right, let's just talk Vic. Let's just get it out the way.
All right, so finale. Let's get into it. So, you know, ultimately, Vic is someone who we see in the show start to come into his own, right? He's pretty insecure as the show starts, but very naive, very like still holding on to his idealism around, you know, doing things the right way and trying to honor his dad and his family, even though they died in that flooding that happened with the Riddler. And he's now thrust into this world that he has no idea about and is forced to make terrible choice after terrible choice after terrible choice, and sort of starts to see himself as like someone who's capable in this world. And he's getting gassed up by the Penguin the entire time, or by Oz the entire time. And then, you know, he gets choked out at the end, which, you know, sort of foreshadowed in the first one, right? Like Oz almost kills him in the first one before deciding, okay, maybe I can use you. But he was always a little bit under threat of like being killed by the Penguin in that sense, that we knew like Oz had that in him, that he was able to do it. So I don't know. I think you're right. As soon as he did that to Vic, it was like, oh, I didn't see that coming, and like, oh, I should have seen that coming, and you got too close, Vic. That was a mistake.
That was a grisly death too. Like after he tells him like, yo, you're my family. Right, and like, we did this, sell it, yo, pour the whiskey, like, let's celebrate, and then choked out like on a romantic bench by the river.
Tosses ID in the river
by his new family. Ooh.
Yeah, for like 30 seconds or 40 seconds.
Asking him to stop or like why and all of that. After pouring out his heart to this guy. What a way to go. But like, you know, for the Penguin, completely makes sense for the Penguin's own, you know, logic and ideologies and what he's trying to accomplish. Once Vic says, you're my family now, right?
That sets him off.
Penguin is like, fuck. Like he suddenly, you know, the light bulb clicks in his head like, oh, this is not good.
Yeah.
I can't be having family, especially what just happened with my mom, right? Her being used as leverage against me. Can't have that. Also, can't have the guy who saw all of his shit with his mom. be around, because that's also weakness that can be exploited.
Mm.
So fuck, Vic's gotta go. Vic's gotta go. Is so unfortunate, but speaks a lot to just how depraved the Penguin really is.
Yeah, dude's an
Yeah,
absolute
like
monster.
we hold out hope throughout the thing that like they'll become like partners and that he'll like train up Vic and get him
Oh,
to
yeah.
be right. Like we think, oh, okay, like Vic's gonna be like safe now. He's gonna be taken care of and like learn how to handle himself on the streets. That's not where it goes.
Yeah, when we first talked about this show, after just the first 2 episodes, we were prognosticating, add that to your list of words, that Vic would not survive the season, and that, he would just be sacrificed at some point. Like the Penguin would let him get killed, or like use him as a meat shield or something like that. When they arrive at that bench at towards the end of the finale, I was like, oh, we were wrong. Vic survived. Vic is
Yeah.
going into season 2, and he's gonna become like his own like badass lieutenant in this criminal operation. I was like, oh, he's gonna get a glow up.
That's what I thought.
That's what I assumed. Wrong. Absolutely wrong. Which was a great twist. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
good on the show for taking us there and sticking true to the Penguin's character and his tragic arc.
Yeah, and they did it well, right? Like you bought that like he would do that despite his connection to Vic and his clear like identification with him as someone who came from rough upbringing. Like that was clear that he always saw himself in Vic.
judged for a disability, and he saw him as a kindred spirit. His
right?
stutter
So he identified a ton with Vic and saw that he had potential when nobody else would, and he thought like, okay, this is something I can do, and he wanted that connection. He craves connection, right? The Penguin is all about that as a person. But we saw in the previous episode that he's in his baser moments is willing to sacrifice those around him for something that he wants, whether it's his mom's attention or power or whatever, right? Like he doesn't have like a super guilty conscience about things like that. Other than that other people disapprove of it, right? But like he himself does not feel bad about what he did to his brothers. He just feels bad that his mom doesn't like it.
Yeah. Twisted.
Yeah.
I think he feels bad about Vic. I think he feels bad. It's just he's also a monster. So it's like you don't feel bad. Cool, you feel bad. You didn't feel bad enough to not do it though.
Right.
Like,
yeah, no, it's strategic for him.
Boo-hoo, but also like it was rough stuff.
Vic he said number one is number one.
Yeah, Vic was a good character.
The way it goes.
And yeah, we learn what family actually means to Oz in the moment and how he'll gaslight himself. And that's just like a way for him to kind of make himself the hero of his own story, of making it seem like he wants to be this people's champion type. And that's just the opposite. He's out for only himself.
He's a jabroni.
Yeah, and the Vic arc was sad because there was a moment where he really could have just took that money, went off with that girl, and left, and had with someone who cared about him. But it works for really establishing that Penguin is, he's a monster.
Yeah, and he tells him like, "You're free to leave. I'm not going to kill you for leaving." Which, like, I don't know, I bought that, but
yeah, he was trying to say you're not a hostage here,
right? That's not what this is, right?
That's
and
part of the weird.
He bought him with like, this is a partnership. Like, I'm like, if you want to leave, you're free to go, right? And so that's even more tragic because Penguin like manipulated him, right? It's like very abusive in that way around like, I'm here to protect you. I'm your protector. You don't need anybody else,
Well,
like,
Penguin does that. Well, Penguin does that with a lot of folks in the show. There was the escort he has a relationship with too is very similar. Of he wants people to be around because he doesn't want to be alone, but his criminal ways can create like a more coercive dynamic. But then he's upset when that person feels the coercion that he doesn't realize he's putting off, and then it's this back and forth of because he even told Vic, "Well, you think you're gonna kill you?" But I'm like, yeah, in the beginning, you literally said, "I'll kill you." So like. He literally, you can go episode to episode, and he's making contradictory statements about what his status is with people in his life are, specifically Vic. And I think was it Eve? Was her name Eve? I'm forgetting.
Yeah.
And Eve.
Let's get into that. Eve and his mom. Ugh. So at the end, we find out that the way that he hangs out with Eve is Eve dresses as his mom and plays out like role plays as his mom, especially like so that he can dance with her, so that he can like be her husband basically, or be her like protector, and she's his protector in some, like it's sort of just like this weird fucked up thing that like when she tells Sophia earlier in the show like Oz is not that complicated, we're thinking like, oh, he just likes to smash, right? Like he just he likes the sex or whatever, and he just needs his
I
needs
didn't
met.
take that out of it, but
well,
that's not what I got,
did you take out that he wanted to role play like a relationship with his mom?
I took it as that was
a romantic relationship with his.
No, I didn't think of it. I didn't see it as romantic. I saw it as his relationship with Eve was just he's insecure and lonely and just needs someone around him. But then later we learned that she probably had her around in part because of the resemblance to the mother. But by the time we get to the ending, he's gone fully off the rocker, or he's really gone off the deep end, and specifically because of the shit the mama said to him. And now that like I don't think she was dressing as the mama doing all that stuff before the ending.
Yeah, that's a good question. I was not sure either.
I don't know that
is
it's
this
for
a
sure,
first time thing or is this an all the time thing?
No, I think this is a first time thing because Oz's whole thing of trying to get his mother's approval was when she was still alive, and so he didn't have any reason to go to Eve for that because he was still actively trying to like get that approval from his mom, who was actually cognizant and around, right? Like,
but she wasn't giving it to him.
Yeah, that's because she doesn't fucking like him.
And remember, Sophia tells her, and we see that Eve is really good about telling people what they want to hear.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think that implies that it was happening even before.
I don't think so, because they showed so many scenes of them beforehand, and they never even like hinted at that. I think
she wasn't on the clock at that point.
No, they had scenes it was hanging out and they like on the clock. My point is that I saw it as she was his emotional refuge in general, because he just is someone who's clearly emotionally broken and needs that. His mother was the person he was trying to get that approval from, and by the time the mother had the stroke and is in a vegetative state, now she literally can't. And remember, he's having a scene where he's literally breaking down and saying, "Mom, tell me you're proud. Tell me." And he realizes, oh, she's nonverbal. She literally will never be able to. And then that's what pushes him over the edge to say, oh, well, now that I know there's no way I could possibly get this from my mother because she's had the stroke and is nonverbal. I think that was motivating him before, was trying to get the mama to be proud when she was still, around. Now it's like, cool, that door is closed completely. Now Eve is the only way I can get that approval that I've been seeking, because now I can't get it from my mom. But I think she always was around because of a passing resemblance to her and his need for emotional approval. I just think the dynamic evolved into that really weird shit at the end because of everything that happened with his mom. That's the way. That was my interpretation. Otherwise, I think
it's a valid interpretation. I think they implied enough that it was probably happening ahead of that as well. But
Brian, break the tie.
Honestly, I think the show leaves it deliberately ambiguous to both of those possibilities being available.
I don't
think how you want to interpret it, right?
Yeah, because even the dress, though, the mama always had the dress when she was alive, while her brain was working, and once she wasn't, then he gave the dress to the other lady who.
What's really twisted is that basically in that last scene, they're reenacting, or Oz is reenacting his childhood moment of remembering his mom taking him to the jazz club when she was ready to get out of her grief, her depressive funk after he did away with her other two sons, which he remembers as this wonderful moment. And the show does this great job of showing us her perspective of that moment. So he's reenacting the moment of when his mom was thinking about killing him. Which is totally messed up.
Yeah. Poor mama.
Did they show where her and Rex decided not to kill him?
What you mean show where?
It was more of a
car, it's gonna be like a car ride.
Moment.
Okay. Like they caught each other's eye and was like, no, kind of thing.
Yeah. Like there was a point where Rex is kind of looking. There was a point where Rex is kind of looking at her like, yo, I could take him out back and we can like put him down and get this shit done with. And she kind of gives a body language answer that's kind of like it's not like a no, but her body language is like, you know what, he's saying all these things, F it, I'm just gonna roll with this instead of just having him put down. And
Yeah,
I don't know if she
interesting
does
that
it
Rex
out of
he starts talking about what he's going to do for her, and I think she relents. at
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
moment.
Okay. Yeah, I caught that part. I just didn't know if there was a moment where she told Rex, like, okay, like,
Not
nix
explicit.
the plan, bro.
Like, let's not do it. Let's not kill my son.
Cancel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Could have been a weird moment too, where
take
like
backsies. Take backsies.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
more of a body language no than a hey, no. Do not kill my son.
I love that like that the second part of the show really, or not maybe second, maybe like the third part of the show, but like this part where we find out that Penguin killed his brothers, then has this like juicy like interplay where Sophia like ends up being able to use that information against him somehow. I don't even know how Sophia finds. Oh, because they do the therapy on the mom.
Yeah.
And she reveals like how she actually did know, and like this secret needs to come out, and we find out like the mom is absolutely part of this problem, right? She gets this advice from Rex that well, he kind of just needs guidance, right? And you can use that want to please you to actually get things from him, right? And to like get to gain more things, to power, to influence, whatever. And she buys into that a little bit of like, well, okay, if I can't like, if he's gonna be like this, maybe there's something in it for us to get, right? And so she's like fucked up in all the wrong ways as well, and their relationship is just like so incredibly just awful. But under the surface, right, neither of them is willing to acknowledge the true nature of their relationship, and he doesn't. He thinks he's convinced her. He has no idea that she knows until this moment, right? And even then, he can't be like, oh, you found me out, I did it. Like he's still like in her face
cutting
is
her
like,
finger off, and she's
yeah,
just
what are
like,
you doing?
dude,
You're crazy. Like, there's no way, right? And so
everybody
like,
in the room is like, dude,
The
everybody
decision's talking.
yeah, and he's just like, yeah, we're not sure whether he's convinced himself that that's true or
we're sure.
whether
We're sure. This man, I've never seen someone gaslight themselves the way, you could absolutely, I don't know. That man
maybe
could
that's
convince
true,
himself
right?
a turkey is a hawk if you give him
he
enough
has
time.
the brother's picture on his desk, so he's still pretending to like have a connection to them or a flame for them in some ways, right? A memorial to them. Yeah, just like incredible like story coming together in that moment around like he's like how far he's willing to like let this charade go, and how he's convinced himself that like, he can do, he did this all for his mom, and how his mom's gonna love him for this, and his mom is like pretending to love him and pretending to do these things, but also can't give him the approval that she wants because she knows he killed them. Like he knows it, or she knows it, and she has the flashlight the next day and is like, this proves to me that he knew something was up. Just like incredible tragedy just all coming to a head right there in that moment where they're all facing off against each other. So I don't know, I enjoyed that so much because of how dark and twisted and like unspoken all of that was, because all these secrets had just like built up over time, and how they had gone on without acknowledging them. It wasn't like the mom was super abusive or the mom was a villain, right? Like the mom had just, I don't know, gone along with this like
she got a shit hand, right? Like she was definitely put in an impossible situation where she's poor, so she's not exactly, she's like, one, she's already broke. She's partially relying on the local neighborhood criminal people to support her. So we already know she's underpaid. She don't exactly got a lot of financial mobility. She got her son. She lose two of them. She even said, "What do you do when the devil's in your house?" She was, I mean, she's done bad things, but she's one of the more tragic characters in the show because she was kind of put in a lose-lose situation. Your son is a monster, like just point blank, period. There's no, especially considering it's not like she was abusive to him or something. Like she actually seemed to have raised him with a lot of love and care. So it's not like he had a shitty childhood.
Well, when we meet her earlier in the season, and
she's awful.
You think she'd be like this, nice, sweet mom. Actually, she's egging him on to like, go take the city, kill these gangsters, whatever. And you're like, what kind of mom is this? Which is so interesting to see this turn at the end and realize, oh, she's actually
the victim. She's the victim here.
She's just playing this role that she's been used to for decades, because she doesn't know what to do with her devil child.
On top of legitimate
and it's
mental
basically
illness.
enabling him to survive in some weird kind of way.
Yeah, like in her mind, she's like, if I'm mean to him, he's gonna want more from me, and he's gonna be more ambitious and go after more of this, right? So like that's her way of like trying to raise him to be successful, is to like use his own need for attention and approval against him, so that he goes and does more awful things to gain more power. It's like really
Twisted cycle.
fascinating. Yeah,
It's complicated. I mean, that's what makes her arc so interesting. That she starts out being like, what the hell's wrong with her? Then you
I really
realize
enjoyed that part of the show.
Yeah, then you learn that she's low-key the victim. Then you learn, oh man, she was kind of putting a rock in a hard place, exacerbated by dementia and legitimate mental illness. And it's like, oh man, she was kind of one of the characters. I feel like she was kind of screwed no matter what was going to happen. Like, her best option would have been to probably have Rex kill Oz, and she's just a woman with no family. Like, that was probably her best outcome she could have had in all this. Like, that shit was, frankly, very, very sad. Also, shout out to the actress. She was great. Like, the way she was able to really swing back and forth between being this angry, grieving parent who's manipulating her remaining son, but also resents him and all that, with the mental illness combined with like her bouncing back and forth of
she
being,
also hates him.
Yeah, but then she bounced back from being like, what is it, lucid? Yeah, lucid, to then being gone again. But then she's trying to dance and enjoy little things. Like, that was really well done acting. Of, you can see the flip switch of when she's there and when she's not. When she's being hyper disrespectful to Sophia, saying, yo man, F you. And then the moment where they trigger her and she just immediately just goes off the deep end. Like, that was really good acting. That I feel like if that's poorly acted, that kind of stuff could absolutely suck the air out of the room and ruin what's supposed to be a really sad, dramatic scene. All of her scenes, it's portraying her illness and situation, were so sad and tragic and hard to watch in a really good way, where, again, you kind of don't like her at the start. By the time you're at the end, you're like, man, this poor woman. F you for some of the stuff you did, but like, oof, you were
and
not set up for success.
She ends up in a vegetative state, and that was the last thing that she wanted. The last
thing she wanted. She literally told him, yo, kill me, let me have dignity. And he's like, actually, no.
Yeah,
like, just straight up.
You're still here for me.
Yeah, now and then you see her crying, so it's like, oh my God. And I know she's had a stroke, she's vegetative, but you don't know to what extent she is or isn't there. And I'm like, oh my God, she is living. This woman just never caught a break. She never caught a break this entire show. Her son was a monster, lost her 2 sons. The son who was a monster, who she kept around, made things worse, got dementia, got a bunch of shit, was living in squalor. All that to still, turns out she always knew, and then by the end, she's a prisoner in her own body. Like, man, she just, the L's just stack. All that shit is like, man, this is all your fault, Oz. Yo, F you, dog.
Like, she is, so the actress's name is Deirdre O'Connell. Hasn't been in anything like as a main character, I don't think, in a lot of things. She was in Eternal Sunshine of Spotless Mind, Secondhand Lions, and What Happens in Vegas. I imagine she played a bunch of supporting characters in those.
Does she get a confidently wrong golf clap?
She did. I mean, she killed it. I don't know. She was in the Daredevil in the TV show. Oh. I don't know what she played in that.
Maybe she was like the.
Ooh, I smell crossover.
Don't, please don't.
Daredevil Penguin crossover. That'd be crazy. Daredevil would take him out though. I think he would get to him. All right. Let's start wrapping this up. Do you want more Penguin stories? Do you want him to start entering into the Batman with Twilight Guy, or what do we want?
Really? You're gonna call that man Twilight? So
what's his name?
The vampire.
Robert Pattinson.
Batman.
What's his name?
Robert Pattinson.
Do we want him to enter?
Actually, is
Robert
great.
Pattinson.
Robert Pattinson has won me over.
Oh yeah, you were trying to sell us on the fact that he's a great actor.
He's a good actor. So you're not about to just call that man Twilight Man, Wes. That's so disrespectful.
I think it's funny.
Sorry, Robert.
Because
Pattinson.
It's funny, it can stand.
Okay. Sorry.
Twilight Man is a great actor.
I got
Sorry, Mr. Pattinson. I apologize if that was disrespectful.
Yo, my G.
No, what is it? I apologize if you were offended.
Yo, if I played Batman and then somebody was like, "Oh yeah, that's the dude who played the vampire," from, I'd be like, "Hey, yo, B, I've played in so much shit. You could call me anything but that."
I haven't seen him in anything else though.
What if Twilight Man always looks like Twilight version of himself, so that in the Batman movies they actually put the makeup on top to cover the pale face?
Yo, if that dude had a sparkling mouth under the Batman cowl, that would be the worst shit ever.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but
It's okay.
Like
Also,
shiny
it's-
teeth.
It's okay.
so wait, do we want more Colin Farrell Penguin, or are we good with like this is the series and that was it? Because I think the plan is right now that he's not going to have another series. I don't think there's supposed to be a season 2 of this. I mean that could change because it's a good show and
It's pretty
money,
popular. I
money
think.
talks.
Yeah.
So maybe they'll do it again. But
yeah. So keep it a buck. I'm not that I say that I wouldn't want more, but a part of me almost feels like Batman, this version of Batman, is better off fighting Penguin's infrastructure than Penguin himself. Like, Penguin's always going to be one of those, like, especially as a Batman villain, they're never going to go toe to toe, like being in the same room fighting. That's never going to be the crux of their conflict. So I almost would like it if the Pattinson Batman is still doing his detective stuff, but he's just fighting Oz's
An institution.
the institution rather than Oz himself, because Oz himself is a dude. You can punch him you could deck him. That, like, him being a dude isn't what made him dangerous in the show, right? Like, he was just a guy. It was his mind and the way he could manipulate. So if there's gonna be more, I would rather Batman going up against his crime empire or his corruption. Honestly, kind of how Daredevil is with Kingpin, where like the best Daredevil Kingpin interactions aren't those two fighting each other, although the fights have been good. It's Daredevil being a badass, and it's like, okay, badassery doesn't beat institutional crime.
well, I think Batman has a history of fighting characters like that, right? Like Joker, you don't have to fight him hand to hand. That's not his strength. It's that Joker does a lot of things to put Batman in impossible positions. And the same thing is true for Penguin. Penguin could do the same thing of, hey, you've got to save these other people over here while I'm over here fucking shit up, right? And we're going to turn the city against you, right? Like this populist message can absolutely be harnessed to go against like the rich. He's going to find out that he's Bruce Wayne and he's rich.
Oh,
and
yeah.
He's like, oh, he sat on the hill for years and never did anything to help you guys. Like, this is your hero, right? And all of a sudden, he's undercut Batman and people are angry. So, like, I mean, I think you could do things with that if you wanted to.
Yeah, I just think crime lords are more interesting than serial killers. Like, or at least in the way they told the story in this world. Like, Riddler already kind of gave us that serial killer type character. Batman against Oz isn't a serial killer. It's just a straight criminal, which I do think the character motivations and how those challenges manifest are differently. Either way, I like when Batman has problems that he can't punch. But
yeah, I think you could do that with Penguin.
I think you could. It'd be cool, but I just don't think that it would be. You would need a bunch of in-person Colin Farrell, those two going at it for it to be good.
No, definitely not.
So
I don't think you could do a movie on that.
I don't feel like a need for a season 2 of the Penguin. Though it felt like they're kind of angling towards, the Penguin tries to become the mayor, maybe, or something weird like that, which is very Kingpin-esque, speaking of Daredevil. But it feels like, from a character standpoint, this one season of the Penguin told a very complete story about his character and his rise to criminal power. And all of that was extremely satisfying, to the point where I'm not entirely sure what else they would need to explore with the Penguin. Like, if anything, it'd probably be more of like a thematic or societal kind of exploration through his character. But like, we know everything we know about the Penguin.
No,
100%. And I feel good about it. I feel good about it, and I wouldn't want to see that get sullied by them trying to cash in and just, trying to squeeze as much juice out of this as they possibly can. But I do think that, he probably will show up again in the Batman 2 movie with Twilight Batman. I don't know if he's going to be the main villain. I kind of hope that he's not, actually, and that he's just more of another figure that you have to contend with, that, the Penguin is moving the levers of the criminal underworld, and that's just one more obstacle in Twilight Batman's way.
Stop that. No, but I do agree. And even in the show, they call him the Wizard of Oz, because it's like, oh, we don't see him. He's just around, behind the scene, behind the curtain. Like, the show actually had a couple moments where they referred to him already being this behind the scenes figure. So, but I agree, Brian. The point of the Penguin was to kind of understand his character's rise to power, how he went from being a driver for a criminal family because that's what we see him start out as. He's just a driver, and even make it clear you're just a driver. Why? Oz, don't say nothing else.
Oh, he did not like that.
Yeah, but I'm saying we see him go from that to
you're getting got, Savon.
we see him seeing that into the end. You're right. That told the story we needed to tell. We know about who he is, why he's the way he is, his motivations, how that got him where he is. Yeah, sometimes
he's a man who does not stand disrespect. Boy.
Yeah, but you're right. We've seen his journey. We don't need to see what happens next because that's not really what's interesting. It's about how he got to where he is. No, I agree with you, Brian. And the way this universe is done, you can absolutely I agree. I think it could turn into just them trying to cash out and put him on screen. But it's hey, what made him interesting wasn't him being on top and being the guy in charge. It was watching him have to finagle his way to the top without all the other shit. That was a more interesting story. It's like watching a comedian after they became rich. It's okay, you're not funny anymore because you
can't relate to these problems.
Yeah. It's I don't want to hear you Penguin talking about, hey, what's up with these drug guys? And it's okay, that's some street level stuff compared to, hey, don't you hate when you're at the city council and the mayor's no, we can't relate to this shit. I liked it better when you were struggling.
When your stock options don't pan out.
Yeah, it's just oh, but bet we can't. It was I don't know,
look at this portfolio. What am I gonna do with this?
Yes, it's like Tom Segura and Dave Chappelle stand up. It's all right, you just a rich dude now. I can't relate to this.
I would take the other stance in that I have loved seeing Colin Farrell be the Penguin if he and who was the showrunner? You said LaFranc something? Lauren LaFranc?
Lauren LaFranc.
So I don't know her work, but clearly good at what she does. So if they decided, hey, we got another story to tell and they get the power to tell the story they want to tell, I'd definitely watch that. I mean, I think if you're proven that you can do it, then I'm willing to see you do it again until you prove that you can't do it anymore. So I'm good with that.
Wes wants to run it back.
Yeah, if we get another story that they think is interesting and worth telling, it doesn't have to be his history, right? Like you said, it could be him trying to figure out new problems or navigate a new world he's not a part of, and the disrespect starts all over again, right? Because now it's the people who are on the up and up. They believe in honor and they believe in whatever, and he can expose them for being actually they're just the same as him, but in richer clothes and fancier clothes. That would be kind of an interesting story too. But who knows? I mean, maybe they go other places. All right. Final grades. I'm going A, maybe A+. I thought this show was really fantastic. I hear Brian's nitpicks around things that were a little bit uneven, but I don't. And that did take it down a smidge for me. So I heard you, Brian. But overall, I just enjoyed the show from start to finish. So
wait, but did you say A+?
Yeah.
You're
I said A.
Let's take it down a little bit.
A little bit. So... it wasn't an A++, maybe. No, I don't know. I mean, it didn't even hearing what you're saying. I don't know that I wouldn't watch it. I would recommend anybody watch it. I thought it was from start to finish. I really did enjoy the whole thing and the moments that they put out there, and it never felt like they were wasting my time. It sounds like you felt like a tiny bit maybe they're wasting your time, but I didn't feel that way at all. So, huge shout out to it. And for all you people who say I don't like something, you're wrong. Love this show. You should watch it. 100%. Brian, what's your rating on the show?
Wow. Wes loved it. I'm standing pat at my original grading of 8.5 Twilight Batarangs out of 10.
So pretty good.
So really great show.
All of us, Wes. He giving 0.5s, talking about Twilight Batarangs. I'm like, man, you both about to just collapse on camera.
It's a solid show, great journey. The central character really effing delivers.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about Colin Farrell's performance.
They landed that finale. That's usually one of the hardest things to wrangle in shows like this, and I thought they did it really well. You wouldn't waste your time watching the whole show. Does the show kind of falter here and there? Sure, it's not like
he's wrong.
It's not the pinnacle of TV out there. We know how good TV is right now. This is definitely not the pinnacle, but it is quite good. And if you're into the Batman, no brainer. There's a no brainer.
Sav, what's your rating on the show?
8 out of 10. 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10. Good show. Enjoyed it. Didn't have any real complaints. I think the only, and we didn't really get to this, but I wanted to say the only real complaint I might have about this show is that, and Brian, you hinted at this, there are moments where I'm like, okay, this show is a really good crime drama with like a DC candy wrapper around it. But then sometimes I ask myself, and I kind of said this before when we were talking in the previous episode about Penguin, I was like, cool, but could this show have been just as good if they just changed up all the character names and location names? Would this show have been just as good, but they're not tied to your point, Brian, the Gotham and Arkham world? Because this could easily have just been like a Goodfellas Irishman type movie with a little bit of like modern grittiness or something. Like,
I would have loved that.
This entire, like, you could have done this show and renamed Penguin's, your character could still be like a scarred disabled man, but like you could have literally changed everybody's name, because there's no Batman references really in the show, right? Besides that thing at the very end. And would this show have been better, the same? Would it have won people over? Not. I don't have an answer to that, but it's a good question of, do we need to make really good shows and then basically put a skin of a different IP around it? When I felt like the IP didn't hurt it, but did this need to be something that takes place in the DC universe? Like, they don't really leverage that. So it's like, if you're using the comic book world, but you're not using the comic booky stuff, what are you doing besides attaching a brand and a name that people are familiar with? And we talk about Hollywood always remaking stuff and all that, but this, or not using new ideas. And this feels like a new idea in terms of a well-written show. But then they say, hey, let's skin something familiar that people would be accessible to it. Would this show have been as popular if it was, everything was the same, but it wasn't called Penguin? It was called, I don't know, Dude's Name or something.
Probably not.
And I don't know what that means, but I guess, you know what? No, I'll stick by that. The only con I have is that I don't think it's as interesting when you take an IP for something like this that has a lot of interesting potential, but then they didn't really use it. It didn't hurt, but they didn't like use it to elevate the material either.
This man didn't want a Penguin show, got a show that wasn't stereotypically Penguin, and now is complaining that it wasn't comic booky.
Well, no, I wanted the umbrella.
Well, no, it's not that I wanted it. No, I love this show and how grounded it was. My question just becomes, like, you couldn't take Avengers Endgame, rename all the characters, and then that's something wholly different.
That's Braveheart.
You know? Point
Lord
is,
of the Rings, Return of the King. That's the same
point
thing.
is, Penguin was what? What are y'all talking about?
It's final battles where everybody comes back.
No, that's not what I mean. No, Endgame in terms of you just the actual movie itself. Like, Endgame isn't a blank movie with a Marvel skin on top of it. Penguin is a crime drama with a DC skin. And that's not a bad thing, but I don't know. But like, what was the point of it being a DC thing then if you didn't really leverage a lot of the DC stuff? All you did was take the names. It doesn't take away from the show, but it's more of a business critique of like,
they were exploring a new. Yeah, I hear you, but they were exploring having a different take on a character that we've known in different ways. I don't know. I didn't mind it.
Like, what if you had a Breaking Bad show and they just renamed all the characters to like DC people and made it a crime drama? It's like, okay, it'd still be good, but like, you don't have to. I just don't like when they don't take full advantage of what the IP actually offers, because then they could have just not have used it and just gave us a good crime show.
All right.
And Brian, you kind of mentioned that at the start. I as we talk about this more, I agree with that sentiment more.
Yeah, I actually think the show would be better if it didn't have the DC
like my mom
rapping on it, because that shackled the characters from actually going to, where maybe they would actually go to in a Breaking Bad situation. But here,
I don't know.
They have to hit the notes of like, oh, okay, this is what the Penguin does, and yada yada yada.
I don't think they let that hamstring them, so I'm good with it. But I hear you.
It didn't hurt.
Let's see if the listeners agree. Should the show have? Was it a weakness in the show that it didn't really explore beyond the DC, or that it was a DC show? I don't know how else to frame your question.
Well, I mean, I think that's the way to put. Like, my mom might be into crime shows, but she's not going to see a show with Penguin on it in DC and think, "Oh yeah, this is for me." Because the DC Penguin part, it's kind of like how it was with Andor, right?
Yeah, but then we might not have watched it either. So I don't know.
I don't know.
You maybe bring more people in.
But it's almost how Andor was, where Andor was this really well written, put together show, but because it shackled itself to being a Star Wars IP, people who might otherwise have been interested, like, oh, it's Star Wars. Oh, I have my preconceived notions of this IP. I'm just not even going to engage in it when actually, dude, this is a show for people who might not even be Star Wars fans. I just think I think it's a fair critique of like, what are we using the IPs for? But, that's just a Savon thing.
All right. Sounds good. This man didn't want a penguin show and then complains that it wasn't a penguin show. Okay. So, friends, we're out of here.
I said.
All right, next show we're going to talk about Gladiator, the original movie from, I think it was 2000. So if you haven't seen it in a while, go check it out. If you got YouTube TV, it shows up on Paramount, the Paramount channel sometimes. You can rent it on Amazon for like $3.99, or maybe you still own the DVD copy from when you were in college. So friends, go watch it and then be ready for us on our next show. We're out of here. Talk to you later. Bye.